evening, everyone. We're back for our usual Sunday night stream, a little bit later than I would have liked, but life happens sometimes as we were coming back from a trip. But we're back to working on Mono Red Burn, making some adjustments from last week's list, as I felt the mana was a little bit of a weak point last week as we tried to go with the 16 lands, 4 copies of Spikefield Hazard, and it just felt like we had too many draws where Spikefield Hazard was our second land and coming into play tapped, and could really mess with some of the other cards that we were trying to test, mainly Kamano faces Kakazan. So I figured we'd give this another spin, see how it felt. Still running a couple copies of Spikefield Hazard, also checking to see how we feel with that. For the additional lands, instead of adding more fetch lands or whatever else, I added a second copy of Fiery Islet, which will be interesting to see how much this adds to our damage, and the Soken Zan, whatever, Crucible of Defiance as a one of. I know Hayashi runs a bunch of these, but you know, we're not trying to play mono red mid range. We're trying to play burn, so I'm only limiting myself to one of these, as they're not always the easiest thing to use in the mid to late game, but it is another land that we can use in utility in addition to our various canopy lands. So once again, mono red, you don't have access to things like Boros Charm, Lightning Helix, or the white sideboard cards, so you have to make some adjustments. We're doing that by playing some copies of Kamano Faceless Kakuzan, which has 3 different chapters. One, it deals 1 damage. Second one, the next creature you spell that you cast that turn comes in with a +1/+1 counter on it. And 3, it turns into a 2/2 creature with haste, that if a creature dealt damage would die this turn by a source you control, exile instead, which can be somewhat relevant. And then we're also playing copies of Flame Rift as kind of our pseudo Boros Charm, although a little bit more risky, as obviously it's doing us damage. Sideboard, changes you have to make, not having access to white cards. You can't play things like Path to Exile. Can't play copies of Sanctifier and Vec. Can't play copies of Deflecting Palm. So instead we're playing Flame Slash. It's kind of our primary additional removal spell. We're playing 3 copies of Blood Moon as kind of our catch-all, and it did really help in a lot of weird matchups last week. Help us win some games that maybe we had no business winning. And then additional sideboards, Smash them with Smithereens and Rolling Vortex, cards you kind of already see in the Boros variants of Burn. So that is the list we're rolling with this week, and we'll see how the adjustments feel. Maybe the mana base being a little bit smoother. We might feel like a little bit more like a fully powered modern Burn deck as opposed to, a knockoff of a Pioneer Burn deck. Here for match number 1. Unfortunately, we'll be on the draw. This hand just has too many lands. We have 5 lands with this hand. Well, 4 lands and a Spikefield Hazard, so probably going to mulligan this. This hand is fine. I think we put back a mountain, though our hand is not the very best here. Up against burn, or are we up against some type of mid-range pile? Looks like we're up against some type of mid-range pile. So turn 1 Ragavan? Nope, turn 1 Thoughtseize. Alright, we have a lot of lands already, unfortunately. Especially for a variant that is not designed to play with a bunch of lands. So it looks like my Grixis Shadow. Opponent gets to go to 9. Play the Shadow out. And then we draw yet another land. So it feels less likely that they're Shadow, but okay, there's some type of mid-range pile. Wow. Guess we offer this trade, which clearly take. There's some type of Grixis pile, it seems. And we'll get some idea after they discard some cards. Okay, so they are Grixis. They have an indomitable creativity. I think we just lose, unfortunately, so. Feels like they have a persist and one unknown in hand. I don't think you pitch persist unless you have a second copy. Sure. It goes to 9, so I think we're getting creativity into an Archon. I don't think we can win from there. Take a look at what they're revealing. Fatal Push, Thoughtseize, yeah. So we're up against... Just drew too many lands and continue to draw lands, so... Blood Moon once again, seems like it's going to be a reasonable inclusion. Vortex is kind of questionable. Flame Slash is probably middling. Probably don't want Smash, although I should probably look at seeing what Archon of Cruelty. This looks like Grixis Archon. So it doesn't look like they're playing any chalices in these decks. Should be the main thing I'd want to bring in Smash for. Do they play much life gain? A little creativity. So we can shave like 2 Blaze and 1 Rift Bolt. Bring in the Vortexes on the draw, maybe, as they're a little more likely to land an Archon. So we'd like to play first. Once again, how does a deck with 18 lands draw 4 lands in its opener? And this one has the opposite problem. We can't keep it because our only 1 mana spell is Goblin Guide. I think we get rid of Flame Rift, and Searing Blaze is kind of questionable here. But we'll get rid of it for mana efficiency reasons. Feels like our opponent's going to play some Hard Evidence. Yep. Okay. Gets a Blood Crypt out of the deal. Sure. So it could be dead next turn regardless anyway. So if our opponent persists here, they go to 8, we sack Kamano. Yeah, Fatal Push. No reason to keep a land in our hand. Of course, they have persist. It goes to 3 and then gets to gain some life, so. Oh, thanks. I appreciate that a lot. Zerez? Does our opponent have a creativity on top of everything? Yep. And no way to come back from that. So some disappointing draws and a matchup that probably isn't all that favorable anyway. So, alright, we're back for match number 3. Sorry on YouTube you missed match number 2. You missed a thrilling Amulet Titan Kicks Burns, but volume 583. Game 1, they did Titan things. Game 2, we Blood Moon them and into oblivion with them losing 2 Rakdos Sagas. Then we killed their Dryad, and then we just won. And then game number 3, they turned to us. They went Amulet, Arboreal Grazer, Cultivator Colossus, Primeval Titan, and we were just dead. So, nothing terribly exciting that match that you missed. Played a land we should have played the Arid Mesa there, so our opponent had less information, but they're going to know we're on a burn variant now regardless. So, remains to be seen. They're likely on Grixis Shadow would be my guess. Grixis Shredder of some kind. Possibly just red-black. But my money's likely on Grixis. Nope, probably more likely to be red-black with Rakdos Saga. Dashing freaking monkeys are really annoying. Opponent hit a seconds on They're going to be going, okay, what is going on? Inquisition. Guess since they hate the card so much, we just play Eidolon. Might hamstring them on mana a little bit. If they want to dash Monkey, they have to take... They have to play a land, not get a token, and... What's up, Jebby? How you doing? Funny part is, do we actually care about Monkey here? So there's nothing off of our deck that Monkey can steal that we particularly care about. At the same time, I don't want them getting Shadow Spear or equipping Monkey in the same turn, which doesn't seem to be likely. Oh, so they're gonna Pithing Needle our Arid Mesa? Okay, sure. Question becomes, do I actually play around anything here? I think what we'll do is we'll skewer their face, bolt, wait till their turn to bolt the Monkey in case they find a second land. They found a second land, but it's not really relevant towards casting spells. Don't really think I care about Monkey hitting us here. Fire Islet, sure. Like, sure, it gives another black or red source, but they could Inquisition or Thought Seize us this turn anyway. And then most of our spells off the top will be lethal anyway. So the reason they didn't go get Shadow Spear is because Shadow Spear was in their hand. Makes sense now. Pithing Needle just felt a little too cheeky. I think our opponent gets the idea we might be on mono red at this point, but no reason to. They can see the game rather than dying to Flame Rift. Got it. So red, black, mid range. think we want Moon. Might want Flame Slash. Like, really hard to tell. Could want some number of smashes. Could even conceivably want Roiling Vortex in some spots. I think Flame Rifts can come out on the draw. And Lava Spikes don't really interact with our opponent's creatures. Obviously, they don't necessarily have a ton of them, but... And smashes, let's go with 2. Board down. Oh, the Islets on the draw. Seems a little weird to be boarding in 3 drops and then boarding out lands, but I think this hand's fine. Of course, has Blackcleave Cliffs into Inquisition or Monkey. Of course, they have Monkey on 1. Force them to have the removal spell, and then the next turn we can potentially Searing Blaze it. It's got the Rakdos Saga. Do they play that? So ideally we'd like to go like Searing Blaze your Monkey into Blood Moon. Okay, we might get our wish. Opponent possibly gets to make a construct token here. They have another land. Attack with Monkey. Okay. Put Blood Moon on the stack. Opponent gets a 1/1. Hits for 3. Likely has removal spells here, which is fine. Torak. Okay, opponent just keeps attacking. Spyro's a little scary. I think we hold on to this Flame Slash. Page Terminate and Torak. 2 black cards, go figure. Is our opponent willing to trade? I mean, they could easily have a removal spell here anyway, so if they're just going to double block, I'm cool with that too. Obviously, if they draw Shadow Spirit at any point in this game, a lot of trouble. Yep, just chaining Spyros, sure. Double Rakdos Saga. And Monkey. Alright, and despite resolving Blood Moon, we just lose. Okay. Bring Islet back in, maybe go down one Kimono. Hopefully we can close out this game by the play. Four lands. Guess we risk keeping it. We were supposed to mulligan against the Thoughtseize Inquisition deck. Hopefully this is a monkey. Yeah. Happy to see monkey here. That means we just get to certain blazes on our turn. This is one card that I just wish would get banned and be done with it. It's just so obnoxious. Just gonna go ahead and kill this. Once again, they get to monkey us, but that's like tying up most of their mana. Play some walkers. Oh, it's probably chilling on some removal spells there. Probably hoping we'd attack into Swiss Spear so they could kill something plus eat something with Swiss Spear. So if they attack with... I say, if they had another 1-mana spell, they could dash with Monkey and attack with, whatchamacallit. I say another land, equip it on Grand Rage Channeler. Best play for us would be if they equip it on Monkey, but alas, they don't. EE on 1 is interesting. Don't know that it really nets my opponent all that much. Blood Moon, a little late to the party, and we're dead. Okay. Doo-doo-doo. All right. So really kind of hard to take a lot away from this league overall. Two things I will note is our first two matches were against difficult matchups. Grixis Archon is, if they ever get an Archon in play, it's basically unbeatable for burn, and our opponent Archon does both games. You know, there's only so much you can do. You know, you can play some Graveyard Hate, etc. Amulet Titan, you know, that's just a terrible matchup for burn. Like, you know, we got them with a nice devastating Blood Moon. You know, there are some burn draws that can be like they're mediocre. You know, really bad draws, but those draws are a lot fewer and far between now with, you know, effectively more copies of Urza Saga, or more copies of Amulet with access to Urza Saga. you have, and then the last matchup, it felt like we should have won game 2 with that early devastating Blood Moon, and then, they just rip a couple of Seasoned Pyromancers, and, they play a much better mid-range game than us. The only thing I can say definitively from this league is that Kamano vs. Kakazan is a terrible Magic card as far as Modern. I suspected it wasn't very good to begin with, but it was kind of a budget option over some things you would actually run in this slot. Other considerations, I think the number one card you would want to play in this slot is probably Ragavan, if I had access to that card, which unfortunately from budgetary constraints I do not. But Ragavan would probably be my number one choice for this slot. Other alternatives, you have things like Soulscar Mage, you have things like Goblin Ward, whatchamacallit, the bad one. Whatchamacallit, Ronin. Just a bunch of different choices that are all bad. The only two that are even remotely conceivable would be Dragon Rage's Chandler, which this deck isn't built to maximize without having one scan, expensive cards like Bobble, or Soulscar Mage, which is a possibility. It's a little bit slow, not having haste or anything, so it's kind of easy pickings for all the cheap spot removal in Modern. One of the things I'm always talking about when I'm talking about burn in Modern is your creatures have to have haste or some type of effect like Eidolon that make them worth playing, and anything that basically doesn't doesn't have it. Ragavan, while it doesn't have haste as a 1-drop, does have haste as a 2-drop. Gets you additional advantages. So there are reasons to play Ragavan, and it makes Ragavan in the turn 2 Blood Moon a devastating play that can be relevant in some matchups. As far as the rest of the deck, Spikefield Hazard continues to unimpress, but I also don't want to play a full 20 lands, so that's a card I might continue testing. Blood Moon continues to overperform basically every time we bring it in, because whether people are just thinking we're on Boros with a bad draw or something. The rest of the deck continues to perform nicely. Flame Slash is fine for what it's a substitute for. Rolling Vortex and Smash, proven commodities in the meta. Blood Moon continues to overperform. Flame Rift is fine. There are some matchups you don't want it, but it's still nice to have access to a 4-damage spell. And I just think that those 1-drops that you're tinkering with really just aren't that good. Maybe you're supposed to go some copies of Skullcrack and just run 20 lands and be done with it. Maybe it's just getting too cute with what we're doing, or maybe you're supposed to run 19 lands, 1 Spikefield Hazard, and 4 Skullcrack, and just call it a day. But I think I'm going to give Mono Red a rest, as it does feel a little underpowered, and we'll probably be back to Boros next week, kind of tuning that list from the last list that we did that wasn't Legendary Ronin in it. So we'll see what happens after that, but I think we'll go back to Boros next week and give the Mono Red project a little bit of rest, although we will revisit it maybe once we have access to some other cards that we're willing to test. The stuff that we're playing right now, other than Blood Moon, doesn't really seem worth the Mono Red experiment despite our 4-1 last week. So, obviously this week we had some unfortunate variants, a couple of bad matchups, and then, just getting out top decked by a rock deck. Kind of happens sometimes, unfortunately. So, but, we gave it a go. Feels like there's something here, whether you need to be a Hayashi style mid-range deck, or if you can actually get away with actually being a Mono Red burn deck in Modern instead of just Legacy. Obviously Legacy has other things like Price of Progress, Fire Blast, that make the Mono Red thing a little bit more worth it. So, we'll see what happens. These are continuing projects, but I will hopefully see you for next week's stream, as we'll be back to Boros Burn in Modern. Thanks for hanging out. This has been John from MTG Nexus. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channels. The main YouTube channel, which is a bunch of modern matchup guides now. The MTG Nexus VODs, where we play all of our previous Twitch videos, go. And then the Pioneer Nexus MTG, which is the Pioneer equivalent of the main modern channel where we do deck guides for the Pioneer format.